plot summary of Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Coates starts the book by talking to his son Samori directly. He talks about a time when he was on a talk show and was asked what it was like to lose his body. Coates thinks about how white American progress has been built on the exploitation and oppression of black people, and how Americans deify democracy even though the country has never really been a democratic country. African Americans were not considered people when President Lincoln said that the U.S. would be run by a government of the people. Coates is writing about the recent killings of Eric Garner, Renisha McBride, John Crawford, and Mike Brown, all of whom were killed because of their race. These killings show that destroying the bodies of black people is a normal part of American society and a key part of the American dream. Most of the time, we think of the American dream as a pure quest for success and happiness, but in reality, this dream is tied to violence against African Americans and cannot be separated from it. So, black people are always afraid because they know their bodies are always at risk of being destroyed. Coates talks about the violence he saw as a child and how the young people he grew up with often said they owned the streets, but in reality they had very little control over the world around them. The streets are dangerous for young Coates, but the schools he goes to are even worse because they punish black kids instead of helping them learn and grow. Coates can't run away to religion either, because his parents taught him not to trust the mysteries of the church. On the other hand, he can learn from his father, Paul, who used to be a local captain for the Black Panther Party and now works at Howard University as a research librarian. Coates thinks that the Panthers and Malcolm X set a better example than the nonviolent protests that are praised at school. Coates goes to Howard University, which he calls my Mecca, after he graduates from high school. He is amazed by how different and lively the students at Howard are. This makes him realize that racial categories are too big and vague to show real differences between people. At Howard, he keeps learning about black history and culture by reading a lot and noticing the big differences between what different black intellectuals say. He also starts to see more of the Washington, D.C. area by going to poetry readings and open mics, where he meets other young writers. He falls in love with 3 women, each of whom makes him question what he thinks he knows about himself and about black people. Kenyatta Matthews is the last of these women. When Coates and Kenyatta are 24 years old, she gets pregnant with Samori. He is named after the Guinean Muslim cleric Samori Touré, who fought against French colonization and died in prison. Prince Jones, Coates and Kenyatta's classmate from Howard, is killed by the Prince George's County Police not long after Samori is born. Coates and Kenyatta go back to Howard for Prince's memorial service. During the service, there is a lot of talk about faith and forgiveness, which makes Coates feel uncomfortable. In the weeks that follow, Coates finds out that the officer who killed Prince is known to be dishonest and incompetent, but he has never been disciplined for making mistakes in the past. Prince, on the other hand, was kind, honest, well-liked, and very religious. The fact that he was killed, of all people, shows Coates how strong racism is. In 2011, Coates and his young family moved to New York, where Coates often feels anxious and out of place. He recalls an incident at a movie theater on the Upper West Side during which a white woman manhandles Samori. Coates treats her badly, so another white man steps in and says, "I could have you arrested," to Coates. Coates thinks that this is meant to show that white people have power over black bodies. He talks about another time when he took Samori, who was 10 at the time, and his cousin to see Civil War sites. Coates feels he has a duty to teach his son the truth about the country they live in, including the sad and violent history of white people sacrificing black lives for the dream. He can't tell Samori that everything will be fine, but he can make sure that his son knows enough about the world to deal with it as it really is. Coates' job as a journalist moves forward, and he goes to Chicago to follow the county sheriff's officers. He sees black people get kicked out of their homes during this time. He also takes Samori with him when he goes to meet the mother of a boy who was killed by police. The mother of the boy finds comfort and forgiveness in her Christian faith, and she tells Samori, "You exist. You matter. You have value." At age 37, Coates gets his first passport as an adult and goes to Paris. Even though he is nervous at first, being in Paris gives him a deep sense of confidence and awe that is very exciting. In the summer of that year, he comes back with Kenyatta and Samori. He thinks about how Samori has had an abnormal amount of security in his own life, but that his son is still very aware of how unfair the world is. Coates thinks about all the terrible things that are being done in the name of the dream, like police brutality, mass incarceration, and dropping drone bombs in the Middle East. Coates goes to see Dr. Mabel Jones, Prince Jones's mother, at her home in a gated community outside of Philadelphia one day. Dr. Jones is a quiet, beautiful woman who tells Coates about her own life. Dr. Jones was born in Louisiana and learned about racism at a young age. However, he did well in school, won a scholarship to Louisiana State University, and became a radiologist. Dr. Jones won't admit that things were hard for her, even though she was the only black radiologist she knew at the time. Dr. Jones says that her son, Prince, is smart and that everyone loves him. She wanted him to go to Harvard or another Ivy League school, but Prince chose Howard instead. Dr. Jones describes the immense pain she felt when Prince died, and remarks that no matter how much black people achieve, it only takes one racist act for all of this to be undone. Coates leaves Dr. Jones' house and thinks about how the dreamers might wake up to the fact that the world is full of atrocities and unfairness. He hopes that this is possible, but admits that it would be unwise to live one's life in the hope that it will happen. Coates thinks about how changes in technology have given the dreamers more power over the world and worries about what will happen in the future. When he drives through the ghettos of Chicago on his way home, he feels the same fear he had as a child.
About the author. Ta-Nehisi Coates was born to Cheryl Waters and Paul Coates, who was a former local captain of the Black Panther Party and the founder of Black Classic Press. The name Ta-Nehisi comes from the Egyptian word for Nubia, which roughly means land of the black. Coates's father had 7 other children. His parents were strict and caring, and his mother taught him to read when he was only 4 years old. Coates went to public schools in West Baltimore when there was a lot of crack around. He remembers that his middle school was especially violent, and that he had to be extra careful to stay safe during those years. Coates went to college after high school. His father worked as a research librarian at Howard University, where Coates went. Coates started working as a freelance journalist while he was at Howard. During this time, he also met Kenyatta Matthews, who would become his wife. Coates left Howard after 5 years but didn't finish. When he and Kenyatta were both 24, they had a son named Samori. Coates started putting his writing in places like the Village Voice, Time, and the New York Times. He became a regular columnist for The Atlantic, a job he still has to this day. Some of his best-known essays, such as The Case for Reparations and an essay version of Between the World and Me, have been published in this magazine. The Beautiful Struggle, Coates's memoir that came out in 2008, was mostly about his childhood and his relationship with his father. The next book was Between the World and Me, which came out in 2015. Coates has won a lot of awards, including a Genius Fellowship from the MacArthur Foundation in 2015. He has taught at the City University of New York and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He goes to Paris often and lives with Kenyatta and Samori in Prospect Lefferts Gardens in Brooklyn, New York, when he's not there.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.